team on Dota, our team
God damn
in
it.
Dota has that shit. Okay. Let me just open up my my own app just to make sure that everything looks okay.
Dude, nice Brock impression.
Yeah,
Here,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's because I was looking down. Usually this thing works all right if I'm just looking straight ahead or like looking slightly down, right? But it's the reason why I'm gonna have something like this open because I need a better desk or at least like a monitor somewhere closer so I can more closely see myself and whether or not the rig is like all fucked up. But anyways, let's see.
Welcome to the Gosu Garage Q&A. It's
Yeah,
your boy,
it's not even a
Sakura.
Q&A. Like, hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy,
You
Mexican
mean
Ungulate. Here,
you mean it's your gal, dude.
it's your
I don't see a
gal.
boy anywhere on this.
You don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know what's under this skirt.
Oh shit.
Um,
Damn.
but today we are doing something kind of important for Gosu Garage as a whole. We
Oh,
we are going to analyze
The year-end
the
reviews.
year-end review. This is the 2020 year-end review for Gosu Garage. Um, there is a discussion that was had on Discord by basically everyone, sans maybe like Dan and Pierre didn't really offer anything up to the conversation, but um, we are going to go through this Discord discussion, not in complete detail, but just enough to start going through what we need to do as a team, especially in concern with Dota and the like. So that being said, we'll start where everything starts at the beginning, where I forgot who it was. I think it was Marty or Mo posting a video of Thompson playing in the off lane, and he does this really cool technique where he pulls the creeps uh, out of the lane to make sure that creep equilibrium stays the same, regardless of whether or not the enemy team pulls. It's pretty neat. And eventually, the discussion started going up as far as watching Topson. He's been playing mid, offlane, whatever, and that's where it all begins. All right, so Mo wrote down that mid players all play different mids according to Dan, which is true. Which is true. I'd said this before a long time ago that part of the reason why mid is such a difficult position is that you basically need to have a larger pool of heroes than whoever you're playing against. You need to be able to play what they play and do it better, or at the very least have it fit better on your team. You can't really have like an Admiral Bulldog or a Pierre in mid unless you have, like 7 or 8 mids, just locked and ready to go. And even then that's bad because mid changes when it comes to the meta. So then everybody started talking about, who plays what. So Marty lists his mids down: Queen of Pain, Lena, Zeus, and Invoker. And he also mentioned his secondary mids. We'll call these a spicy picks. Snapfire, Ogre Magi, and PA. Like, he doesn't really play them very often, but I have seen him do it. Now, Chip wrote this comment: I think one problem for Marty is all his mid heroes are countered in the same way by the same heroes, since they're all casters with heavy mana pools. This is partially true, but not completely true. All right, Marty says that he picks snowball heroes, which is like the important thing to get out of that whole fucking long ass discussion. It's not so much that Marty's problem is that he picks mid heroes that are countered because them being casters. It's the fact that they're snowbally heroes, right? If you're able to pick a mid that can just completely negate that kind of snowball or prevent like any sort of rotations, you just lose. Like that's Marty's biggest problem when he goes mid, because all those heroes kind of want to do the same thing. They just want to control the pace of the match on their terms, and the moment they can't do that, you can't really catch up. Like, the only person here that you can kind of catch up with is like maybe Lena. Lena's the only person here that can kind of catch up, and he doesn't do that very well. So like if he plays Queen of Pain and he doesn't do good in mid, like he's fucked. You can't do anything. Same thing with Zeus, same thing with Invoker. You don't really, unless you have a very good team fight or the team makes a concerted effort to try and bring Marty back up, it's over. That's the problem. Like he's picking snowbally heroes, and that's just, if you don't snowball, then you fuck up. Right? So then that's like one of the problems that he has is he picks heroes that require a high level of execution, and even outside of that, because of the fact that they're snowball heroes, you have to consistently do well at every stage of the game. The moment you fuck up in anything, the snowball stops and they stop being good. I think it's a little better now that they added Shard, especially for someone like his Queen of Pain, because you can get a really easy like orchid, like a cheapo orchid with Shard now, but that's besides the point. So according to Marty, who says that like I'm the best mid, but just barely. Um, I play Zeus, Lena, which is quote unquote uncommon according to him, Necro, and Lion. And Chip mentioned that these are countered similarly to Marty's heroes. But Chip also mentions that I play Shadow Fiend, Batrider, Leshrac, Vano Sniper, and Shadow Fiend. And then others also mentioned that I pick Brewmaster, Shadow Demon, and Warlock, right? I am the most varied picker out of the bunch. And that's what makes me like a good mid, not a great one, right? And Mo's comment was that all my mids are the same. They're just run at you heroes, which is not true. Those are usually the ones where I am the most successful with, but not all my mids are run at you heroes, right? Like, for example, Sniper and Shadow Fiend are not run at you heroes. Uh, why did I put Shadow Fiend twice? I'm retarded. Hold on. Necro and Lion aren't really run at you heroes either, right? Like the only ones who are run at you heroes are like these three: Brew, Bat, and Lesh. And you only really see that because when I do well, it's extremely obvious that I'm doing well with them because Bat and Brew just disrupt so many fights, and Leshrac just pushes in every lane super fast and just gives everybody a free game. Um, but this is sort of something that I've noticed with the group as a whole, that that's a common misconception about the way me and Pi play. Like, yeah, we play aggressively, but there's a difference between just playing aggressively and taking advantage of a situation. You know, like usually when you play Batrider, that's like really key, right? People just always assume that all I do is just, run at people and put napalm stacks on them, and the moment they're out of position, I just like dive to tier 2 and just kill them. Maybe in the past you could do that, but not anymore. You can't do that. It's more just biding your time and putting yourself in a position to do that, right? Like you want to be able to control the lane in a way where you can keep putting stacks on people over and over and over and over again to the point where when the situation arises that you can do that shit. When the situation arises when you can do that, um, you can, right? You can do that. So this isn't entirely true, but I just wanted to point that out, right? So Marty is like, well, caster initiators, like, and it goes two ways. Either David lands and murders their mid, or he gets butt. I kept the misspelling there because I thought it was funny. Butt fucked, right? Um, which is true, but at the same time, though, he's sort of looking at it as a way of like, it's either or of these things. He never notices the times when mid is just even, right? Like me and the mid kill each other, or it's impossible to kill each other and we just do nothing but farm the whole time, right? But I wanted to point this out because that's just what he sees, right? It's one of those like psychological things where you see the extremes. You don't see any of the things in the middle, like the average game where I don't completely just steamroll a game or nothing happens and we get quote unquote butt fucked, right? And it's one of those things that I feel like he has a problem with in mid. And I think a lot of us, with the exception of I guess me and Mo, and only because Mo has recently started to play more mid, it's because uh hold on a second. I forgot to do something. I forgot to do something. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, this should be good. Okay. All right. Um. Right. Everybody can hear that, right? Yeah. Cool. Cool beans. All right. So where the hell was I? Just had to make sure that the sound was still good. Um. With everything. Okay. So. Um. So yeah, it's just that thing where people just assume that mid has to either completely win or completely lose. There's no middle ground. And I think that's a problem that most of us have in general. That you don't see uh, any of the sort of average things that happen in there. And whenever something even just remotely goes off of equilibrium in one way or another, it just goes out of control. Like that's how mid is supposed to go, right? Like if you win mid, you should you should have a really good chance to win the game, and vice versa. But if it doesn't happen, it's like they get kind of confused, and the moment something happens to change that equilibrium, um, it goes down to this. It's like me murdering their mid or getting destroyed, instead of it being something more subtle than just saying, "Oh, there's a mistake," and all that stuff. Yeah, and of course, like the mark of a great player is that they know what to do in those situations. That's totally right. Um, you know, it's but it's also at the same time like part of the draft, right? Especially in mid. Because yeah, like a great player is able to determine what to do, but if the hero can't do that specific thing, or he can't do it very well, then you're screwed. It's the reason why Zeus is such a high risk pick in a lot of like high MMR games and rank games, because people at that level know exactly what to do to kill um uh to kill Zeus, right? And just like rush him down. So it's like Zeus always wants to get damage and get it as fast as possible so that he can just burst everyone down for free. But if you make it so that he can't get that damage for free, you're delaying his power spike at like the 20 to 30-minute mark, right around there when he starts getting Ags and Kaya and like Veil, Refresher, Octarine, like all those items that he needs to get really chunky and scary. Instead of that, oh, I need to go Blink, or I need to go Yules, I need to get an Aether Lens or something, or anything to help me survive. And that's the problem. Like that's why you need a diverse amount of mids, right? As even as a team or just as an individual. So, Mo, he has more diverse mids, TA, Puck, and Wind Ranger, right? Did it with Dan. He goes Dragon Knight, Sniper, and Shadow Fiend, right? Um, Mo's been playing more mid. I still think he plays a little too passively, but part of the good thing about the heroes that he's picking in mid is that they're very easy to sort of get that mentality, right? Because it's the same thing with Batrider and everything. Like, because technically, like Puck and Wind Ranger love to run at people, right? Like, you have to run at somebody with Wind Ranger in order to kill them. Same thing with TA. She has no range unless you max out Psyblage, which you never do. And then with Puck, he has the ability. He's so mobile that you want to keep moving around. So like these people totally run at you and just bully you, right? The difference is though is that these are more subtle, and then just run at you heroes, quote unquote. Um, so he's getting that down for damn sure. Um, and maybe soon he'll start to get that nuance when you're in mid, where it's not so much about you being aggressive, it's about you making situations where you can be aggressive. And we just try to do it as much as possible. And then with Dan, he plays like these are like three perfect Dan heroes, right? Where you basically just sit in lane and you farm, right? You sit in lane and you farm. You don't really go for a lot of kills, like because with Shadow Fiend, he's that's like the only exception to this, where Dan, if he gets the opportunity to just run at people, he'll do it. But it's only if he gets like a raise or two. He doesn't go out of his way to set up raises to hit the enemy unless they're going in on him, which is his playstyle. It's not really something that's inherently bad, right? The only piece of advice I would give is put it so that you would raise in such a way, or you would pull the creeps in such a way where you either farm faster and you're able to go into the jungle and keep doing it there, or you try to hit the enemy hero at the same time that you're getting his creeps, right? When they're trying to like run in. But that's just like subtle stuff. That's really minute shit. So there's not really much to say about Dan because he already plays really safe and he plays safe mids for the most part. So but that brings us to something that came up in the Discord with everybody. It's like, should more of us practice mid? Marty said, it's like when Chip started saying a few things and everybody was discussing it as far as whether or not it'd be useful, he said this: never said to Chip that you'd be the dedicated mid, but it doesn't hurt to have practice in it. It doesn't hurt. And Chip's response was good, and I agree with it. Like, yeah, that may be true, but I'd rather just practice what I'm going to play most of the time to get better. This is the fucking key right here, right? Because it's fine to sort of play outside of your comfort zone to sort of see what it's like on the other side, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. You never know what a support goes through until you walk a mile in their shoes. Um, which is true, but only if you already know what it's like on your side, i.e., you have to be good and recognize like what you have on your property before you start going everywhere else. Because if you start moving around too much with the roles, you become kind of a jack of trades, but in Dota that tends to be bad. Usually, just like with the heroes in the game, if you're kind of good at doing everything, that usually means you're a bad hero. You're a better hero if you can do one thing really well, like Lycan or Broodmother or something, where you can get countered really easily by playing those heroes. But the moment there's an opportunity for those heroes to be played, you immediately win against anybody who isn't prepared. Like if you have a good draft for it. And with Chip, that's sort of the mentality that we need more of, just in general, right? You just practice where you're going to play most of the time to get better. And if there's an opportunity to present itself after you've already gotten that kind of nuance with what you already play, then you can start moving around and trying to take that sort of thing everywhere. I don't think, with the exception of Pierre, myself, and maybe Dan if he played more, I feel like people don't have like a set way to play. That's part of the reason why this sort of thing happens with our group, right? Where it's like, oh, well, how does David play? And this is what everybody always thinks of, like run at you heroes, super snowbally, all that stuff. When in reality, that's not the case. That's just what you see on the outside. But we'll get more into that later. Uh, so as a segue for role variety in the group, Mo said that we have good results with him mid, Dan as a carry with Morty support, and the others in a mixture of the offlane, which I agree with. I think this is a pretty good like team composition right now while we're still learning how to just work with each other. I think by putting the people that already sort of worked well together in the off lane and we're already comfortable with it, while having like this sort of setup, it's pretty good, right? Because Marty is kind of he plays kind of aggressively as a support, It's really weird. It depends on the hero that he plays, but when he works with Dan, it's a good mixture because Dan normally plays safe and Marty usually plays aggressive. And because they defer a lot of the time to other people, it makes them good lane partners because they defer to each other when there's nobody else around. So Dan starts being a little more aggressive with Marty, and Marty becomes a little more safe with Dan around, right? That weird sense of like pulling back on each other makes them better lane partners. So that's why I agree with this. Same thing with Moses mid. Mo, for the most part, makes good decisions in games, but I feel like a lot of the time those decisions are based off of a faulty mindset going into the game. And playing mid will help that out a lot, right? Because in mid, it's really important to know like what your hero is capable of doing at basically any moment in the game. That's super important, right? And being able to understand your hero just slightly better than the other person allows you to play more risky, or it opens up more avenues of attack or defense that you didn't think were there. So it would make his decision making better and more decisive, which I think is what he needs. And he's doing better because he's playing heroes that, they do the same thing that I do, but it's in a more subtle, like quote unquote Mo way, right? It has to be some weird offhanded shit that nobody plays anymore, and it just happens to be good, right? He was like the first person to realize that Sven Ags was busted. Well, not busted, very strong. Let's not give Mike Ross too much of a bone here. Um, okay, so this is when there's an argument that was starting with how the lane setups have been going lately. So when Marty was talking about Chip, this is what he said. This is verbatim. I literally just copy pasted this from the Discord. I said, so the games I've seen you go for, you either A, get Birchie, that our support isn't working hard enough and transition to 5 out of spite. B, you roll hard enough, you go 3 accidentally. Right? It's one of those two. It's never anything else, according to Marty. Because he's seen every single game that Chip's gone for. He's seen every single one. And it's only these two things. It's only these two things that ever happen. That's it. And he mentions, as a corollary, A happens almost always when we have a random support or me as 5. See, this is an important fucking thing right here. This fucking assumption right there. Right? That's bad. I would be okay with the random support because we don't work together with him. But this right here is what rubs me the wrong way. Okay, so we'll keep going. Because this will come up later. Marty's issue, right, with Chip. He really YOLOs. He really picks YOLO fours while having almost always the lowest net worth because you're doing five's work while 5 buys boots of travels and blink. So I'm taking this right here. See, it says David is 5. It'll be a mathematical equation. I'm gonna copy this, and we're gonna remove 5 and put there, and we'll move this other 5 and put right there. See what I did there? That's algebra. That's algebra. What Marty was saying was, 5, right? But since he put this as 5, he automatically assumes that when this happens, this almost always happens, which is never the case. There's been times when Chip goes 4 and I go mid or I go carry. So why does he always assume that as a 5, which we did algebra, why does he always think this? Why does he always think this? All right, so I want you to keep that in mind later. I want you to keep that little piece of algebra in mind. Chip's response. Like I said, if we play ranked, I'll stop with the YOLO picks, which I think is very important. Because when we usually play ranked, we start taking the game a little bit more seriously, right? Because Chip is always just there to have fun, right? And everybody has a different definition of fun. But one of the main things that we have in common as a group, not everybody, you know, but most people have fun when they win. With a few exceptions, obviously. Chip will have fun if something really spicy happens in the game. Same thing with Pierre. It doesn't matter if it's a win or a lose. I don't mind losing as long as there was something interesting that happened, or it was just, really fun. Some of our and even then, people are still kind of salty when we do that. But when we play ranked, we tend to take the game more seriously. And when we take the game more seriously, this sort of shit right here and right here tends to happen just because we're just trying to have fun, right? So then there has to be a discussion about what is more fun, playing the game or playing to win, right? It's something important that everyone in the group will have to ask themselves eventually, especially when it comes to fucking ranked, but it will come up later. Okay, so as things went on, people were talking more about the positions, and we mentioned that the offlane was one of the ones where we do best at because we have a lot of good offlane players. So, uh, Jojo mentioned that his threes are Earthshaker, Tidehunter, and Abaddon, right? The Lord of Avernus, right? Because of course he loves ABBA, the band, right? Um, and I agree with this. I haven't really seen him play Earthshaker or Tide. Well, Earthshaker mostly, but I mean, Tide is really good right now, and he's not that difficult, so it's not really like something that JoJo needs to buy these items or whatever. Um, his Abaddon doesn't really have a lot of issues. I mean, that's JoJo's best strength, at least at the moment, is that he only knows how to play like two heroes, kind of like Pierre. But he knows how to play the two heroes very well, and at the very least, they're in different roles. So he's a little harder to ban out than just saying like, I can only play one position and only two people in that one position really well. So at least he can play one hero in two different lanes because the skills tend to transfer well within each lane, but not within characters, if that makes any sense. So, uh, Chip mentioned that from before that he said that um, what's it called? He wants to play, just practice what I'm going to play most of the time. He said positions 3, 4, and 5, which doesn't really help his argument because that's a lot of fucking positions. But he mentioned that for his 3, he plays Slardar, Axe, and Centaur. And he's been playing Dragon Knight in rank, so I put this on there even though it wasn't mentioned in the Discord. Um, his Slardar and his Axe are kind of sus, in my opinion, because with Slardar, you really need to press the advantage that you have early game. Same thing with Axe. And a lot of the times with both of these in particular, you really need somebody else in the lane with you that can help you. Because Chip isn't necessarily a very good laner, and that's super important as a 3 to be able to find positions and moments where you can go in and get kills really easily. Which is why I don't think he's that great with these two. Because if you don't have that ability to position yourself to get good damage or set up for your support to help you out, you're gonna die a lot. But I don't really blame that entirely on him because I mean they're melee cores and they require you to be right next to them to do damage. Centaur and DK are a different story though. They're really beefy melee heroes that are able to farm safely and kind of ignore the laning phase, which is why they're kind of good for him, right? Because Centaur, he wins a lot of trades by not doing anything, right? Hold on a second. Ugh. Oh, geez, sorry. It was somebody was at the. Uh, I thought somebody was at the door, but it turns out it was just my cat. Um, just opening the restroom door. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, that's right, Chip. Um, with Chip in particular, these two heroes are good for him because they're able to ignore the laning phase. DK with his armor and his regen, and he's able to just breathe fire and get good last hits. And ditto with Centaur, right? You can always just double edge or let the creeps hit you, right? And you win trades by retaliate just pinging the support without doing anything, right? So, I mean, this sort of brings out Chip's best, like worst qualities in the laning phase. Like he's only good with people that kind of ignore it, and he's only good when you have somebody else that's with you that allows him to do that sort of thing. This stream was not brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. I wish I was sponsored by something. Then I'd be able to afford a better camera and better eyes. Chips 4, um, sort of in the same avenue, right? He says Pudge, Enchantress, Ogre, and Bounty Hunter if greedy. That's what he put in parentheses for Bounty Hunter. I think it also applies to Ogre, but not that much. With these, it's a little different because with Pudge, you don't, especially when you play him as a 4, you don't really show in the lane very often, and you're just trying to go for hooks. So, like before, he doesn't really lane with Pudge. He just kind of waits to get a hook. Ditto for Enchantress. She's able to just outlane people just by just by hitting people, right? With impetus and the heal. With Ogre and Bounty Hunter, it's a little different. I mean, they're just able to just run at people and not really think about the consequences of his actions. Like Chip is, I guess he knows his weaknesses and strengths pretty well because all these people just kind of ignore what you do like the entire time and just wait for an opportunity to present itself, whether or not the other person is there or if they're just inherently strong in the laning phase that you don't have to think about anything. With Bounty Hunter though, it's kind of suspicious. I don't really see him play Bounty Hunter a lot, but it makes sense if it's just greedy, so we'll just leave that alone. With his 5, Disruptor, Vengeful Spirit, Shadow Shaman, and Jakiro, maybe. As far as these go, these are more heroes that just set up for the other person to take advantage of, which is why he does really well with his combro Pierre and myself when he plays a 5. Or even if he picks these as a 4, which he's done before. But with these, you sort of just stay back and you just babysit the other person laning, right? And the moment they try to do something, then you're just able to jump on them. So it's not really, he doesn't really play 5 a lot of the time, but the same issues plague him. This is around the time when things start devolving very quickly because Moses asked for my 2 cents for the mid lane, right? I was taking a nap at the time, so I was not able to uh, say anything in particular. You know, I, I was dead, basically. Uh, and Marty's immediate response, as far as what my 2 cents were, this is an actual quote. He wrote this down, and it made me laugh, and it made me a little upset. I'm hurt. Well, I think, and he's saying this as me, obviously. So I'll pretend that he's pretending that he's me. Well, I think I'm the best mid laner. My deaths are the most efficient, and I get stuff done. Marty is a retard mid who never builds boots or travels. Dan is alright, but he lacks the brutal ferocity like me. And it made me laugh. This right here is not very well constructive. It's not very constructive. It's funny, but the way he basically talks about me talking about his mid is kind of troubling. Where he just automatically assumes that I always say this, that they're the most efficient and I get stuff done, which is not true. And I've never called him this, ever. And I've never mentioned that Dan lacks a brutal ferocity like me. I mean, I wish he could be a little more aggressive, but I've never gone out of my way to say that um, he doesn't have that sort of thing inside of him, which I think he does. You know, which I think he does. But that's the whole other thing that I have to talk to Dan about. Um, and then afterwards, it was followed by agreements for most everybody that offlane is my best position, which I also agree with, right? And people were mentioning that, you know, like, oh, like he's a good mid or he's a good carry, he's a good support, whatever, blah 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 blah. So we're just basically talking about my roles. And JoJo, because I put this down because he said this, but also to have somebody sort of vouch for me actually saying it. Avocado already said that he thinks his mid lane is his worst lane, which is true. I think mid lane is my worst lane right now because I just haven't really had a lot of practice in it. And Chip says this: while he did say his mid lane is the worst lane for him, I think Marty's point is he is going to say he's just better at every position than us, including mid, despite it being his personal worst. I think what Mo is looking for is advice taking Avo out of the picture in terms of the mid laners. This right here is what Marty needs to understand. This comment here is better than just talking shit like this. This right here, because Chip is right. I would say that. I would say this. I would actually say this, and I would believe it. I'm better at almost every position than everyone else in the group, despite it being despite it being my personal worst. Not necessarily because I'm trying to stroke my EP or anything like that, but it's just I just have more experience in that sort of thing, right? And that's not what Mo was asking for in the first place. Why would I stroke my own beanie like this? Why would you assume that I would do that? Right? I had already mentioned before that I wanted to take everybody and analyze a few games to help you guys out. So why would you automatically assume that, oh, I'm just the I have the biggest dick ever, blah blah blah. My tits are awesome. All that shit. No, of course not. He immediately defaulted to this position where I say I'm the best and I think everybody's terrible, instead of actually listening to what I have to say about this point. So when Chip mentions when Chip mentions this, right? This is the important thing that you should put up instead of trying to point out my worst attributes, you know, and talk shit. He's clarifying what Mo's saying and he's asking me for my honest opinion about everyone else, which is what he was doing. This is better. That attitude that Chip has right here is something that you need to pay more attention to. Well, anyways, Juna says, while I agree that Avo is the best mid laner, it's because none of us have tried focusing on mid, which is 130 fucking percent true. You can say Marty, but he's a quad player, not a mid player. This is also very fucking important too. Also, Avocado doesn't have the best 4 or 5 in the group. If he does, it's only marginally better, which I do agree with. Just because I say that that I'm better at every position doesn't mean that it's like I'm 5K ultra divine immortal supports because I do everything better. No, it's only the fact that I just do it a little bit better. I just do it a little bit better, and even then, that's a subjective thing at this point in terms of like what you consider more important in a lane or whatever. But again, that's just whatever. Uh, I'll focus on these other two things too, right? Because this sort of focusing on a lane is something that the only people who have really done it are the people that are considered like specialists, like outright. The only reason why my mid is better than everyone else is because I used to focus on mid and I stopped, right? I stopped, but I still have that practice. So that just makes me just a little bit better, right? And Juan is right. The only reason why I'm the best mid laner is because nobody took up that mantle of focusing on mid. And when Marty tried to focus on mid, it was mostly just who was playing Quap. And Quap, unfortunately, if people were saying that I get carried by Undying, then Marty definitely gets carried by Quap. Because Quap is a very strong mid laner. She's very strong. In order to win mid lane, you literally walk up to the other person and you press Q. There you go. You win the lane. That's it. It has 2 levels in it. That's like more than a tango worth of damage. That's a huge amount. And in mid, where that sort of equilibrium is super important, her being able to do that and just walk in and just keep hitting you out of it is super strong. Super fucking strong. Right? And while it does help to know how to play co-op when you play mid, obviously, it's important that Juna says this because we already mentioned that when you have to play mid, you have to have a diverse group of heroes. And when people consider your co-op scary, but literally nothing else you have scary, that's a problem. You know? It's like we ban Marty's co-op out of mid, and he's no longer scary. Doesn't matter what he picks. If he picks a Zeus, if he picks Invoker, anything like that, doesn't matter. If we ban out the Quap, he cannot play mid anymore, and in like the most efficient way. Versus the other heroes that I have, you have to ban Batrider, you have to ban Lesh, you have to ban Zeus, you have to ban all these heroes to get me out of the mid lane, and you still can't do it. You still can't do it. And each of them plays mid in a slightly different way. It's not just walking in, pressing a button, and just pushing the other person out for free. It's not that easy. Well, anyways, and this right here is sort of the same thing because none of us really focus on mid and none of us really focus on being a support. That's why Chris is probably the best. Like, if he played more, he'd probably be the best 5 in the group because he's the only person who consistently plays that position. And he knows how to do it well. Alright, so Marty goes on to ask who's the best offlaner, right? Since we've been talking about mid so much. This is Juna's response, which I am going to co-opt as my own. Debatable. My Undying gives me a run for my money, right? And that's if you're not considering bans and shit, right? Mo, if we take bans into consideration, Marty would be the top mid laner. That's not including me, which is true, since his heroes get banned in houses, which is yeah, to give Pi a run for his money. Thank you, Juna, for clarifying. It would give Pi a run for his money. Um, yeah, this is only partially true, you know. But again, the only hero that he's really scary on in mid is his Quap, and everybody would agree with that. Which is why Juna said this. Juna hasn't played in years, but he knows that Marty as a Quap is pretty good. But the moment you ban the Quap, it's like, what else does he have? He doesn't have anything, right? But this is enough because again, we don't really have a lot of people that are willing to do that sort of thing. So now the infamous comment by Marty. It's like, wait, Juna, I'd like to hear what you mean by David is a better mid player. I put that you as emphasis because he obviously wanted to put it that way. I'm genuinely curious what David does better than I. Juna's response is David is just a better player. He does almost everything better. And Marty started asking for examples. And Juna had this wonderful gem. I don't think you should be comparing yourself to David if you want to improve. Yes, 100%. Let me go back over here and saying what Marty thought I would say as a joke about the mid lane. Well, I think I'm the best mid laner. My deaths are the most efficient and I get stuff done. Marty is a retard mid who never builds boots or travels. Dan is alright, but he lacks a brutal ferocity like me. So if you think that that's how I would sort of react to how people would ask me for advice, then why the fuck would you want to compare yourself to me? Why would you want that? This is why I agree with Juno specifically. It isn't even the fact that like there are other people that are better, right? Compare yourself to someone good, which I also completely agree with. This is good advice. Just compare, just watch what a professional does and just emulate them. That's super important. Because a lot of the times when I was playing Undying, dude, I copied what Ice 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 did. Because I liked Undying before, I copied what Ice 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 did, and my win rate went up. I just copied what he did with Undying. Ditto with Timbersaw. I just started watching him play Timbersaw, and I just started copying what he did. You know? I watch videos, and if something really crazy happens, or even in a rank game, hey, that was really good. I should just do that forever. Same thing with Batrider. It's like, hey, Batrider's just stopped going Blink Dagger. Maybe I should stop going Blink Dagger too and just go Boots of Travel and farm really fast. And lo and behold, it fucking works. you know? You do want to compare yourself to someone good, right? But when you start saying that you're comparing yourself to me, you're already at a disadvantage because according to you, you're comparing yourself to somebody who already has notable flaws in comparison to Thompson, who also has flaws, but obviously he's a million times better than I am. So Marty continues to ask for Juna's take, right? Just keeps poking him, and Juna goes, you know, I don't really know. I really don't know. I'd have to watch a game for each of you to tell you why. I just know Avo is better because of his results that he's seen. You should 1v1 mid versus him to see for yourself. This is okay advice, but it's not perfect. Because a 1v1 only details what happens in the lane, right? It only details what happens in the lane. And even then, it's not a perfect representation. Because the 1v1 in mids have a different win condition. Dota, the game Dota, has only one win condition. If the Ancient is destroyed, you lose. That's it. That's the only condition in the game that you have to get to. Everything else is irrelevant. KDA, GPM, XPM, you know, last hits, denies, all that shit. Item timings. All that shit is fucking irrelevant. The only thing that matters is whether or not the Ancient is standing at the end. Versus a 1v1, those things actually do matter, right? Because it's the 2 kills or whoever takes the tower first, right? And because of that, itemization is different. You start getting things like mangoes and fairy fires. You start getting things like wands. You start buying mangoes. You start buying items to prolong the laning phase because that's all it is, right? So it's okay advice to help out within that particular like iota of a game, even though a lot of times when I lose mid, it's not because of a horrific mistake that happens in the laning phase that just spirals out of control. A lot of times it's because people gank me mid. Their team rotates mid, kills me, and we have no response to it. And it happens to him too, all the time. So while it's good advice, it's not perfect. But Marty continues with that sort of line of thinking and says, Marty, but in our in-houses, I tend to best David in mid when we fight. And this is not entirely true, because it shows an issue with how he picks his heroes. Because he assumes that when you just win the lane in mid, then that's the end all be all. Because he plays a snowball hero. I mean, those are the heroes that he likes. He plays as a carry, as a little segue, he plays PA, he plays LC. Those are the carries that he plays. And those heroes benefit a ton from that kind of snowball, right? Like if you win the lane, you win the game. But if it happens where he says he tends to best, which isn't true, and we go kind of even, which is a contradiction to what he says usually happens to me in mid, what happens then, right? That's the issue, because it's not just about being able to just win the mid on its own. It's what happens afterwards, right? I mean, with Batrider, I've had games where I get destroyed in mid, and I come back and I have the highest net worth by the end of the game, with a ton of kills and a ton of assists. Like I just stopped dying, and it's like, so what's the difference? What happens when I beat him? You know, how is he able to recover? Why is he only focusing on this one section, right? So, anyways, that's just what I wanted to mention as far as that sort of diversifying your mids, right? You want to have different heroes that aren't just snowball heroes, because it starts making you think about, how do I farm better? How do I start ganking better with heroes that don't have built-in gank mechanics? I'm also going to mention that too, because he plays Quap. He has a fucking blink. It's super easy. Chip, you don't think Alvo is best as a 4 or 5? Undying is more commonly played as a support 4 to 5, and that's what he plays in ranked, which is true. While I know ranked ain't everything, and his playstyle doesn't fit with us often, I'd still lean to him. Pi is definitely the best position 3, but if you ban Axe and Scent, I don't think he's got it anymore. And this is, like, we'll keep going. Alright, so Marty's response to this comment by Chip. Not gonna lie, I space on his Undying. With that, I'll give him the 4. The 5 depends on the game state too much. He's aggressive, as if this is a negative. He sees this as a negative, instead of just a trait. On games that he can't go aggressive, or shouldn't, due to a weak lane partner or stronger off lane, which is also not true. It's also not true. I see him flounder a lot and die too many times. So, like right here, I'm gonna space this apart just because it's a giant block of fucking text. This is also not true, right? I mean, obviously, if we have a lane that favors the aggression, I'll capitalize. But there have been games where I don't go aggressive. You can ask Dan about this. And just because going aggressive, that doesn't necessarily mean you're just going for kills all the time. Being aggressive just means just poking the enemy offlaner. And Dan can vouch for this. I mean, obviously he's not here, and he usually doesn't get on the Discord. But if I show him this, he would probably agree with me that this sort of aggression doesn't necessarily have to translate to I'm only going for kills. It could also just mean I'm just poking out the other support. I'm just poking out the offlane. I'm just attacking, right? I'm just making sure that Dan or whoever my carry is isn't just getting completely bullied by somebody else who's stronger than him, right? That's not true. And sometimes just because you shouldn't due to a weak lane partner, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Even with someone like Spectre, if you're a strong support, why wouldn't you go aggressive? If you're playing something like, let's say, Dazzle, why wouldn't you just hit the offlaner with a poison stone and start hitting him? Oh, because my lane partner is weak. Well, who gives a fuck about your lane partner? Your lane partner just wants to farm. If he's a weak lane partner, he just wants to farm. So if you pick somebody who's strong aggressive, see, you didn't mention that part. He didn't mention like if you go a strong aggressive hero like Lich or uh, Shadow Demon or anybody like that that's able to just keep pressuring people with a lot of like really cheap shit and just forcing that stronger offlane, right? Because he didn't put this. I'm gonna put this in like 5 quotation marks and the slash and or because sometimes it's both, right? Sometimes it's both. You have a weak lane partner and the off lane is stronger, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you completely change your playstyle, right?
Hello.
Oh Jesus! Oh God, that was loud in my ear. Holy shit. Um. So yeah, we'll just leave it at that. It's just that he doesn't think about it in the other way when it comes to the support. I'm analyzing the shit right now, Pierre.
Introducing from Gosu Garage,
I'm
Mr.
out, by the
Von
way.
Bean here
Mister.
to also
Introducing
bring
and
up.
bidding farewell to.
Goodbye.
I'm out for the evening.
Okay, well you can just tune in. I'm streaming this right now. Bye.
Oh, shout out to my peeps.
Shout out to the
Bomb Bean
boys.
Clan. Gosu Garage. 2020, 2021. Coming at you. Another year. Another win. You know how we do. Don't check my last game.
Get out of here, bye. Okay. So to continue, it's why I think Chris holds it on the 5. If it's one of the carries, if I need to kill and go on somebody, Chris will follow through. If I don't, he'll stack camps and babysit. Once he feels good that I won't get boot fuked, he'll rotate out. Which is true. And I do think that Chris would be the best 5 if he just played it more consistently, right? Because I mean, there have been games where Chris struggles because he tries to go into this mindset, right? Because it's like he's basically playing just for you. He's a very good babysitter, you know. Because sometimes, like this, for example, once he feels good that I won't get butt fucked, he'll rotate out. Sometimes rotating out isn't always the best thing. What if like another lane, all the lanes are doing good? What is he gonna do? I mean, he could stack camps. He can always just stack camps anyways. He doesn't have to leave. He doesn't have to rotate out. He can always just stack camps. Or y'all can push the lane, and both of you can rotate out. If it's starting to be like one of these, right? If you need to go and kill somebody, you'll follow through. You push the lane. Hey, now you have 2 heroes that can rotate out, and you want to go in and kill and go on someone like LC, right? An LC, you want to move around. You want to go and kill people, right? And taking that lane faster is great, right? It's one of the things that Chris he still has problems with, but it's not that big of a deal because as a 5, making a minor mistake like this isn't like a make or break kind of deal. It's more just an efficiency issue. Chris just has problems with efficiency for his game a lot of the time. Like he's very good at what he does, but he can be more efficient at it, right? Or and at the very least, like one of Chris's strengths is that he'll defer authority to somebody else as far as like, hey, we should do this, we should do that. And if he's with somebody who understands his hero very well, or just the team in general, he'll tell Chris what to do, and Chris will do a fucking like perfect job on doing it. Like, hey, I need you to stack camps. Okay, he'll do it. Or like, we should push like right now. Okay, we'll do it, etc. So this is true, but this isn't a complete positive. This isn't a complete positive. Argument arises about positions between the group as far as like technically speaking, like this person's better on 4 and 5, but sometimes on 1 with these heroes, all that shit. And Marty says this: I'm just saying that if Pi actually took a moment to seriously practice another hero or two, he'd be our best offlaner, no debating. It could be a contest between him and myself, though, with my edge being my diverse pool of heroes, right? My pool of heroes is what usually gives me an edge a lot of the time, especially when it comes to drafting, and Chip agrees with this. Um, Pierre, though, this would be a little difficult because if it's like another hero or two, it depends on who he picks. Because I feel that Pierre is very good at a particular type of game within Dota itself, and that's just bullying people. And unless the kit has that ability to just innately bully people, he can't do well. I mean, think about it. He plays Centaur and Axe, and those two people kill you faster if you hit them back. Axe has a counter helix, and Centaur has retaliate, and both of them punish you for trying to come in to get last hits and lane. Like Pierre's heroes punish you for playing the game. If you try to harass him out of lane, he hurts you twice as hard with interest. And if you try to come in for a last hit, Centaur just clink. He just double edges you for a shit ton of damage, and he can take it because he's so beefy. Then Axe just puts burger hunger on you, and he just gets close. He starts punching you, right? There's not really a lot of heroes that fill that kind of niche where they do something based on what the enemy does and it's free. I feel that has a lot to do with why Pierre is very strong, super strong when it comes to that. And not having that sort of like free damage, quote unquote, as Pi would put it, it hurts him a lot, and it kind of acted as an invisible crutch to him. I feel because a lot of the times he'll get outlaned by people who are terrible. They're awful. It's just that he's just kind of used to getting something for nothing with those heroes. So even though he would get a lot better if he practiced another hero or two, it's just not as easy as just seriously practicing. There's something like subconscious about Pierre about wanting to just slap meat with another person in lane. So he needs to be very careful with how he picks that. All right, Chip agrees about that. Marty on myself. He has two heroes in mid who terrify me: Zeus and Batrider. Actually, Tasha and Les too. So it's actually 3 heroes. I'll put that as parentheses. 3 heroes. And Chip says, I don't know, Marty. His Necro is good, as is his Veno, and you can go Veno anywhere, which is also a good bonus. Shit, we never seen him Undying mid, and that gave you trouble. We got raffle stomped by an Undying mid a few weeks ago, and it was embarrassing, which is why I'm laughing here. And of course, since I play Undying, right? And it's just, oh, so technically I can go mid Undying against Marty and just obliterate him, supposedly, right? Because there's nothing you can do. So Chip says, all I'm saying is I take him mid with Necro, Veno, and Brew versus you with your second lineup. Nothing is definitive. You both have your flaws, which is true. Like, I'm okay with admitting that sort of thing, right? It's totally fine. And this is what Marty's response is to this statement. What I'm trying to get at is this: I do believe David to be our best player due to his sheer consistency with all of his heroes. That said, I do feel we have people who eke him out on certain roles. Pi on 3, Dan on 1, Chris on 5. Which is okay. Like with Pi, we've already mentioned that these are already kind of debatable. But it's okay, because this is a segue into what I call the KDA situation. This is a big part of the discussion that happened that devolved into name calling and harassment, supposedly. So everybody started talking about uh, kill death ratio in relation to Dota, right? And in Dota, as I had mentioned before, that shit don't matter. It don't matter. The only thing that matters is whether or not the ancient goes down, right? That's a win. I mean, obviously, having a higher KDA would help out because that means that you're taking more people out of the game thus giving you a better chance to win. But everybody was mentioning, including Juan and Chip, that it's not the end all be all. And it was mostly about Chip's Pudge, right? This whole thing got kind of salty because Marty had brought up Chip's Pudge, saying that it's terrible, but yet we win with him. And he couldn't understand that, right? So we will analyze this as this progresses, but just keep that in mind. Marty said, if we are going to be okay with that, David's the best mid and offlaner with my Kunkka. Because he gets an insane KDA, and we lose because we suck, not him. Which made me laugh. It's like, okay, And Chip hits him with the fucking checkmate. Chip, y'all gonna acknowledge my pudge? Then if it's about winning games, because you can't flip the script. You can't say that the KDA is important if you're saying that my win's important, right? You just said this, right? Checked and kecked. Credit to Juno. Got him into a check. So eventually it boiled down to Chip's pudge versus my pudge. Wins versus kills. And this has been something that's been going on for the last, I don't know, two or 3 weeks, where we've been arguing about who has the better pudge, because Chip has a better win rate with pudge, but I tend to have better stats with him. But I don't have a good win rate. It's like 43% or something compared to Chip's like 50 something, like 55, 56, which is pretty good. Pretty damn good. With 100 games, I think, or so. So Marty commented this. If David picks Pudge, I can pick knowing he'll do well. If you pick Pudge, I usually go comfort pick because I don't feel your pick is as strong. I'm more prone to go a spicy pick with David's Pudge, which we will usually lose with, than yours. Because I don't have faith in your Pudge. I pick what I feel can carry with a lackluster 3 to 4. I won't say that's the reason, even though he said this and this in the same paragraph. I won't say that's the reason why we win, but that's my thought process when JC your Pudge. It's a misspelling, but I kept it in there because I thought that was funny. Well, see, I had mentioned this argument a long time ago, that I pick Pudge, and I used to pick Pudge's mid a lot when he was good in mid, or at least okay. And that usually means that if I'm not a good Pudge, we will automatically lose the game. As a mid Pudge, you have to be able to land hooks, and you have to be able to make an impact, or else you're just gonna lose. You're gonna be a literal useless pick. And I mentioned before that part of the reason why Chip's win rate with Pudge is pretty good is that we pick lane combinations that help Pudge out, like Darkseer. I'll go Darkseer when he goes Pudge. Hey, put Ion Shell in Pudge and just surge him so he moves way faster than anyone else with Rod on and does 1,000,000 damage. Of course he's gonna do good with that fucking pick. Or you have somebody like Bane, where you put them to sleep and it's a free hook, unless the other people try to stop it from happening. Like, there are setups that allow him to do very well. And I've always mentioned that usually whenever he picks his Pudge, we always pick around it. And that's usually not just because people don't trust, they don't have faith in his Pudge. It's also because he picks him in a lane that's not mid, like I used to do. Because I used to pick Pudge mid all the time. And at that point, you don't have to pick anyone that works well with Pudge, because he's going to be by himself. I'm going to be by myself. Versus when Chip plays Pudge in a lane with somebody else, you have to think about that sort of thing. Because what if you have PA and you blink in and Pudge hooks you? I do that shit all the time when I play with Marty. I hook his motherfucking ass 100% of the time when he plays PA. Because he'll jump on somebody who's super weak and slowed, and instead of waiting for me to get the hook, he'll jump in to try and get the kill. And I'll hook him, And it's a lack of communication, whatever you say, us being like kind of greedy when it comes to those sort of things, but that sort of thing is important just in terms of drafting, right? Like, people will get in your way. Same thing with Undying Pudge. It's a good laning combo, but it's difficult to play right because Undying zombies can be hooked. So you have to build him differently. You have to pick around him. And he did not instead of just going with that more detailed analysis as to why this happens, he goes straight to, I don't have faith in your pudge. And I won't say that's the reason why we win, but that's my thought process. AKA, this is a lie. Or either that, or it's just a very, very, very bad comment. Either one. So Mo responds, the only time I don't like Chip's pudge is when he panic picks him because of the time, so he defaults to him. I think the mindset of just picking it unnerves him. But if he straight up picks it because he feels it, he does good and can be comparable to David. See, this is a much better uh, dissertation as to why Chip's pudge tends to have a better win rate, right? Because he mentions the times when he doesn't do very well, because he panic picks him, and we have nothing to help him. But when he picks it up because he feels it and he wants to play him, he does better. He does better. He does good, and he's comparable to mine, which is good. So Marty continues on with this. He does, like, I feel like you, as in Chip, have gotten better. To the point I might start branching out on my picks. I'll still give you shit, though, when you miss point blank. That shit will never not be funny. In the same vein, you'll keep giving me shit when I fuck up a combo with Invoker, or fail to kill with any of my carries. To which Juan, being the absolute shitter that he is, Juna, point blank hook misses are like losing a coin flip. You missing Invoker combos are because you suck. Oh, oh man, it's even funnier reading it out loud. Juna's spitting hot fire right here, and this is something that I highlighted as things kept progressing. Right, this is a primary issue that we have as an entire group, not just with Marty or myself or anyone. The primary issue, according to Cheapest, all I'm saying is it's really sad that I have to pick Pudge to get y'all to play a hero you're good with. Either you want highest skill with the hero that doesn't affect wins. That's the wrong word. It's supposed to be A. Or the hero that doesn't have to play out of his mind, but usually gets a W. There are intangibles that don't show up in KDA. This whole fucking thing right here is super important to just us as a group, or just in groups in general. Is that the fact that we have to do this sort of thing just to be consistent and practice people that we want to get better with is saying something. Where we have to go out of our way, according to Chip at least, that we have to move around certain people in order to accommodate their roles or accommodate with what they want to do. And of course, yeah, either you want the highest skill with the hero that doesn't affect wins, i.e., like getting hooks and shit, which is what I do, right? Or the hero that doesn't have to play out of his mind but usually gets a W, which is what Chip does. Chip usually has that mentality of like, well, if I'm going to pick Pudge, hopefully somebody will pick something that will help me do better. I'm putting myself in a position where I don't I don't have to be perfect, but it fits with what we're trying to do. And that's the intangible. That right there is a fucking intangible that doesn't show up in KDA. Like, what about the people that were assisting you or setting up for the kill that you got, right? Or saved your ass from dying in a particular spot, right? That shit is super fucking important. And I feel like basically every Dota player needs to hear kind of shit like this, right? They are intangibles that don't show up in the fucking stats, in the graphs. Segue, a brief segue out of that seriousness. Uh, OD sucks donkey balls right now with a 39.66% win rate this month. Shout outs to JoJo for looking that up because OD is doo doo right now. He blows so goddamn hard. So then Marty, instead of taking this as what it is as good advice, right? He goes harder because of course, Marty. What I'm trying to figure out is how you've gotten a low KDA with a positive win rate. My CM has a better KDA and a positive win rate. My Dazzle is on track with being my best support with 37 games, 59.69% with a better KDA. And he mentions that his CM has a 2.03 and Chip's is 1.92. Chip's Pudge has a higher win rate than my CM, admittedly, but not more than my Dazzle. Now, see, right here is sort of the problem, right? Because Dazzle, in the positions that you're playing him at, is better than what Pudge does right now. Pudge is admittedly weak in the current meta right now because he doesn't really bring a lot to the table that is super important right now, right? Like, in order for him to be important in a game, he needs levels and he needs like a few key items. But you can't put him mid because he gets outlaned super hard with the changes to his tool set. And as a support, you don't have the ability to get the levels and items you need fast enough, right? There are other people like Dazzle or Crystal Maiden that are able to manipulate games based on how strong their abilities are, especially in the laning phase. And he didn't really think about that when he was writing this sort of thing out, right? Like, you have the ability as a range support that has an amazing slow to punch people out of lane in comparison to Pudge, where you need to land a hook and you need to have more help, right? But he's just trying to figure out how he's gotten such a low KDA with a positive win rate, right? Instead of looking at it as a team or as the particular heroes that you're playing, you just, I don't know. I don't know. So Juna says, Chip is better at something that you don't know about. Maybe you should analyze his games. You're the one who wants to know why his Pudge is winning. This is the best fucking advice that Juna's given in a while. And it's related to pro game shit that started off this whole conversation in the first place when the Thompson tech was linked. This shit right here is super important. And I feel like almost nobody in the group does this sort of thing. Because a lot of people don't know, but I actually go out of my way to watch you guys play when I'm not paying attention, right? Like, whenever I say no, I'm not going to play, I still watch. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. I always watch. And I do, and sometimes I do watch closely to see if there's any sort of issues that I can bring up eventually later. It's a lot easier to notice mistakes when you're outside of the game because you're not focusing on what you yourself are doing, right? So I do watch everybody's games, and I do take mental notes as to what everybody does. You know, whether it's good or bad or interesting, right? But I don't understand this whole mentality that you're trying to figure it out, but you haven't been analyzing his games. If you were really analyzing his games, you would go out of your way to actually see, like, okay, how many hooks is he going for? What kind of hooks is he going for? Um, what's the draft look like around him? What's the difference between the draft where he picks Pudge versus the ones where I pick Pudge? Or vice versa, right? What about the games where I went Dazzle? This particular Dazzle game went really well, and this other one didn't. Why is that? You know, you don't go out of your way because not you shouldn't just analyze. And this goes to everybody in the group, by the way, not just Marty. The only reason why it's directed to him is because this in the Discord was directed to him, but this goes to everybody. Maybe you should analyze other people's games or your own games, right? Go out of your way to look at a replay and wonder, why did that work? You know, like, why did this particular strategy that we did just happen to work? Was it because of something that the enemy did? Was it a mistake that they made? And if so, was it something that we can repeat again, right? Can we force that kind of mistake, right? Can we make our enemies pick something that doesn't help them, right? It's like one of the things when I realized that PL is actually really good against Earthshaker, because I watched a replay of mine where I saved it originally because I'm like, oh man, this game was so good. You know, I went PL and they totally counterpicked me with Earthshaker and Magnus and Sven. Like, they had so many heroes against me, and I managed to like just mop the floor with them, like 30-1 or something. Yeah, yeah, flashbacks to analyzing shit. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you and Pierre are the only other ones that consistently analyze your own games and other people's games. And that's because we come from an RTS background, right? We watch Pure Ponage and you watch the replay of yourself striking out at a bar talking to a girl, right? You tried to rush them, and they had really strong defenses, and you couldn't breach their defenses with your few icebreakers. You had to put up a proxy conversation first, and then see if you can whittle down their defenses, their walls, right, and start like talking about what they like. Go around the wall. Anyways, but it goes to everybody. Yeah, you should try to analyze it. And that one particular game, it's like, oh my god, I dominated these guys, and they totally countered me. And when I looked at the game again, it's like it wasn't as impressive because I figured out that the moment I got Diffusal Blade, Earthshaker couldn't do anything. He had no mana to try and go for an Echo Slam. And we dominated the early game enough to the point where by the time he had a Blink Dagger, he couldn't catch up to me anymore. I was killing his team too fast, right? So at that point, all he had was a Blink Dagger. I was fed, and even if he managed to get in close enough and I'm not around, it's a wasted pick. He only picked Earthshaker because he thought that Earthshaker gets counters PL really hard. And the opposite is true, actually. PL counters Earthshaker because the Earthshaker is so focused 9 out of 10 times on the PL to get that super awesome Echo Slam. 6 million Echo Slam, hit everybody and all the PL illusions, boom, kill everyone, we snowball out of control and we win. But what happens if you don't? Then he's a wasted pick. You literally picked one hero for the chance to do one thing that's really cool, not realizing that in the laning phase, it's hard to contest PL. You don't have Echo Slam. You only have a stun that requires a lot of mana. And if he gets a Fusel Blade fast enough, you can't do anything. And it's those kind of analyses that you really need in order to elevate your game as well as like your picking strategies. That goes for everybody, especially for people who eventually want to captain. You want to go through those sort of anomalies, right? Where you thought that we should have done terrible and we end up winning, or we thought we should have won and we didn't. Because there are moments where, hey, we think this pick is really good and it just totally backfires and we don't know why. And I go back and look at those replays, like, oh, that's the reason why this didn't work, right? Or this one item like is what we needed at this time and we just didn't get it. That's super important, right? That's why I put this as the best advice given. This is like the most important thing. If there's any takeaways from anybody watching this, it's that. That's what that is. So anyways, to continue on. Moses. I feel KDA is pointless, kind of pointless on supports. Since their job to whatever, I don't even know what he meant by that. It takes to guarantee. Your job is to do whatever it takes to guarantee the course too well. If anything, KDA should only be things on mid and carry, which I kind of agree with. I mean, it's not saying that the A part of the KDA should be completely ignored, especially on a support. Like the perfect support game is like 0, 5, and 25, like a ton of assists, and like that's still pretty significant. That's a KDA of 5. You have 0 kills, and the assists, even if the assists counted as half, that's still 2.5. That's still better than almost everyone else here. If you went 0, 5, and 25. It's crazy. So even though it's not completely pointless, because there are some supports that you kind of want to have a good KDA on, like Pudge, for example. Chips Pudge, you want to have those. You want to have a high KDA to get those flesh heap stacks, right? Same thing with Lion, right? Any greedy support, you want this sort of thing to be high. It just depends on the hero, which Juna eventually, as acting as my proxy in this conversation, does. Yeah, Juna, his comment, lol. Of course it is, but it's not the end all. That's what makes Dota complicated, right? Fucking here, shit. I wish I could like mash this and just copy it every fucking time I say something about Dota. KDA is even misleading on certain heroes. Some heroes are good at flash farming and win the game with 1 or 2 team fights. Some are pushers, some are bullies, gankers, etc., etc. A flash farmer or pusher will have a lower KDA and higher win rate. This is Dan right here. This is literally Dan. Like, this is what he does. This is what Dan does, and this is what Juan did when he played Lycan. By the way, Juna, if you're listening, Lycan is fucking like busted right now, like legitimately busted, not Mike Ross busted. Like, oh, I don't know how to kite Sven. It's more like his win rate went up like almost 10%, and his pick and ban rate went up by like 20%. He's insanely good. Lycan is insanely good. He's probably legitimately broken right now. He's stupid good. So you should just start like grinding ranked again just for the hell of it, and just playing Farmville with Lycan and murdering people. So that's why I'm stealing this. I'm stealing this particular thing as far as this argument. So then there's a little bit of a segue. Well, slightly. It was more like Marty trying to prove a point. And he ended up proving one, but not the one he wanted. So Marty asked this question. Question. Is Spectre a fight hero or a farm hero? And I'm sort of mixing and matching different parts of the Discord conversation here, but to make it more digestible. What does Pudge do, right? As an aside to what the KDA was, which is what I wrote right here. Basically pointing out that fighting is important and KDA is a good measure of that. That's basically what he wanted to point out with these sort of like hypothetical questions. That's what he wanted to say. So, Juna, he pulls someone in and disables them. Who he pulls in is very important, and what he does changes at different phases of the game. Ditto for Spectre, right? Who you jump on and during a fight when you ult is super important. It can win you the game or lose you the game. And so Marty does not take this as it is, and he starts talking about damage and his fight potential again. He starts talking about, rot and a hook and stuff. He's basically just going down to that like big burst damage he has. And Juna says this, which I also would have said. It's clear to me that you have a set way you think the hero should be played. And that's why you don't understand Chip's win rate. And I 100% agree with this. 100% agree with it. Because Chip and I don't play Pudge the same way. Because if you had actually analyzed the fucking games, you will notice that Chip prioritizes Rot first when he plays a support Pudge. And I prioritize Hook first. Because the damage and how you apply that damage is completely different. Chip understands that his hooks, they can be spicy, but it's not something that he relies on, especially when he has a lane partner that sets things up for him. So why does he need to max out the hook? The only reason you max out the hook is because of the cooldown and the damage, versus the rot, which technically gives you better overall damage and a better slow every single time, right? Chip wins in lane a lot of the time because he builds in a way that helps him out in the laning phase, right? He maxes out rot first before he maxes out hook, right? It helps him farm more because when I play Pudge, I don't farm. I just kill people. That's the only thing I'm good at with Pudge. I just kill people. And the moment I start getting items, that's when I start snowballing out of control. And Chip doesn't do that. Chip doesn't play that way. He plays Pudge as a legitimate like lane bully, and I play Pudge as a ganking jungler. I try to set up picks and kill people, while Chip just tries to be annoying. And if he's able to set up a kill with the hook and just the rod, it's even better. So when he hooks somebody on their own, like a support, and he maxes out the rod, they can't run. Versus for me, I max out the damage. So if I hook the carry and I have somebody with me that we can go get a kill with, that motherfucker dies super fast. Especially if I'm able to hook them again, right? I like roaming a little bit more with my Pudge only because I max out the hook. That burst damage is huge, and if the hook lands, that's a free kill with the mid. Because the mid will always want to go for the kill, especially if they know about it. And that's the thing. You didn't think about that because you didn't go out of your way to analyze how Chip actually plays Pudge. And I did. Because it's really easy for me because I was playing with him. You know? But it's like you didn't think about that in relation to myself as well. And that was a problem that a lot of people have. Admittedly, Chip has the same fucking problem too. The only reason why he comes out on top in this argument is because he just happened to be right on accident. Anyways. And Juna is the only one that's actually thinking about it properly. Even if he doesn't really know anything about Dota, his mindset is in the right spot. He's got a better mindset when it comes to getting better at games. Well, so anyways, Marty, it's how the hero should be played. So again, his kit says grab one person, kill him, walk around and impel people with auto attacks and slows and hook when possible, get kills or assists to get beefy. Pudge's kit isn't as complex as Invoker, and while it may be true, there's more nuance to that sort of thing, right? Because which Juna also says. Juna, there's more to Pudge than that though. Invoker is mechanically complex, but I don't know if his skill ceiling is much higher than Pudge. I don't know shit about Invoker though. which I laughed at Juna because he's dumb. And yeah, Juna is able to see that just because his kit says that's what he wants to do, that's not necessarily all that he's good at, right? Because I mean, he's also a tank too, right? Yeah, because it's like when it comes to positioning, skilling, and item builds, yes, there's more to Pudge, but the game plan: see hook, hit hook, kill, walk around, and either hook or wait for hook. And Juna's like, yeah, that too. He's more than just a hook, and this right here is super fucking important because he also didn't mention that, like, oh, he doesn't always have to hit hook. Chip almost never sets up a kill with Pudge with the hook. He's not me. He doesn't do what I do. He has blink. He usually goes blink on Pudge. Sometimes he'll try to go for a hook, but he goes blink dagger, where it's like, oh, if we have enough people here, I'll just blink towards them and just rot and dismember. So like these two already, and these last two, you know, he does not do. You automatically misunderstood how Chip plays him versus how I play him. I play Pudge the way people think he should be played because I'm inherently a greedy player. I like going in and fucking with people with Pudge. That's what I like to do. Chip, on the other hand, prefers to play him as a bruiser, a tank. You know, he goes blink dagger, he goes pipe. You know, he goes Urn. Well, I guess every Pudge goes Urn, but in comparison to me, I go Aether Lens, I go Urn, I go E Blade. I almost never go blink. I'll go blade mail. Like I just go in and just focus on just doing as much damage as possible, right? And that's the difference. My build literally allows me to get a higher KDA than Chips does. But Chips, especially when he comes playing with us and the teams that we usually play, the way he plays tends to be better for us because we don't. Whenever we draft, we don't have a lot of stuns, a lot of guaranteed stuns. And yeah, of course, if you get a hook and you're able to dismember people, hey, that's awesome. But if he builds in such a way, especially when it comes to his skills, to just catch people and kill them, why not do that? He just plays him like a Bat Rider. He literally plays Pudge like Bat Rider, and I play Pudge like Pudge, and you didn't see that. Well, anyways, there's more arguments about hero nuances and shit, but this is what gets the main point across, right? So Juna says, the optimal way is whatever way works in that situation. If you're only playing towards your optimal situation, you're not going to do well. AKA, if your carry is only good when you have free farm, that doesn't mean you're a good carry, which I totally agree with. And Marty kind of missed the point when he said, if you aren't playing to be as optimal in the current situation, you're not going to do well. That is super wrong. Super wrong. Or at the very least, it's misguided. Right? It's a mindset issue that details some key problems. And it's not just a problem that Marty has. It's also a problem that I think Dan also has and Mo also has. Where they think like this. If you aren't playing to be as optimal in the current situation, you're not going to do well. But that's not what Juna said. Right? The optimal way is whatever way works in that situation. And sometimes the situation is changing. Right? The reason why our group tends to have problems with transitions in the game is because a lot of you, and just people in general playing Dota, do this. They play to be as optimal in the current situation. They're not building things, like, say, for example, they're not building things in advance of something that's going to happen. I mean, this goes to show that you're more of a snowbally player than I am. Because you're focused on being as optimal as possible in the current situation. Whereas for me, that's not always the case. Sometimes I think into the future, like, hey, they're eventually going to have this, they're eventually going to have that. You know, like if they're building BKB now against me, it makes my tools better. That's usually how I think. I don't necessarily think about how things are going right now. I like to think about things at least like 1 or 2 steps ahead. Oh, I'm such a genius, whatever. Ugh. But Juna mentions that, right? He thinks the same way I do. If you're only playing towards your optimal situation, you're not going to do well. Because the moment that doesn't happen, you fall apart. That's what happens with Dan. It's what happens with Mo. It's what happens with Marty. It's what happens with Marty. And it kind of happens with JoJo and Chip sometimes, but they don't get affected about it as much. But partially because they just do whatever the fuck they want anyways. It doesn't matter. And that's sort of the thing. There's a reason why Pierre is such a good player, especially in the off lane, is because he plays towards his optimal situation, but he plans for things that happen when it doesn't work. Like he's, oh, I'm gonna build Lotus Orb because of this, this, and this, and I'm gonna try to go for that. It's like, well, they don't have anything yet that makes Lotus Orb good. It's like, but what happens when they start getting, Abyssal Blades? What happens when they start getting Adoses? What happens when they start getting Sheepsticks, right? Or Orchids or anything like that, right? You're building not just for the things that are happening right now, like, oh, I need a Blink Dagger and a Blade Mail because that's what I need to do, versus what will I eventually need, right? Like, do I need a BKB sooner rather than later because they're going to start jumping on me more often, right? Am I going to have to build a Blink Dagger or something? Or am I going to have to build an Urn or a Spirit Vessel for the heals they will eventually have? You know? And this sort of thing, this is the main reason. I honestly think this right here is part of the problem that we don't mesh very well as a group. Because half of us are trying to play as optimal as they can in the current situation, while the other half are trying not to only play towards the optimal situation. Where we're not just planning for the moment where everything works. We're planning for things when, hey, like we haven't seen Anti-Mage in a while. We're gonna need something to stop him. Like we're gonna need an Ados. We're gonna need this. We're gonna need that. You know, it's not just a matter of like, well, we already have this sort of thing. Mo has gotten better with that sort of thing, but this also goes to the whole like comeback mechanic and making bad decisions, right? Because usually this sort of thing forces people to make bad decisions. Like that's usually like Mo and Dan's problem. Usually Mo is good in the items department, but not in the playmaking department. Because a lot of the times he'll make a really weird decision because of information that he thinks he already has, or it's a strategy that fits in with what we want to do, right? So we'll try to force it over and over and over again. I mean, this showed up in the in-house that we played, right? We played in an in-house a while back. Check my channel for that particular VOD. But in that one, your team, Mo and Dan's team in particular, they were playing to be optimal in the current situation they found themselves in. And my team, the one with me and Pierre on it, we decided to completely change up the things that we were doing. We said, this isn't working. We're getting picked off and they're running as 5. So how about we completely rotate the situation and just split push? We'll do what they should be doing, right? We're no longer going to be focused on trying to fight them head to head, because unless we're perfectly ready, it's not going to work. We're playing towards your optimal situation at that current time, and we weren't. We went out of our way to avoid you, even though at that point we probably would have been able to take you. Instead of just saying, hey, this is the one thing we can do to fight, we just changed it up, and that's what helped us win that game. We changed up that situation, and it went from being an even game to one where Mo and Dan's team was completely behind. They were down 2 racks because they made a bad call with thinking that they had the particular uh, game state under their control. When the moment it just once it didn't go well, right, and somebody got picked off that didn't need to get picked off, we immediately took advantage of that and we took 2 racks, right? And I feel like a lot of the bad decisions are based on that sort of thing, where you're not just thinking about what's going to happen in the near future. You're also not thinking about the consequences of what happens if that sort of thing goes bad, you know? And people have gotten better at it, but it's one thing to get better at it and keep doing the same mistakes than just not realizing there's a mistake at all. Anyways, let us continue. Juna, Marty's just close-minded. It's why he hasn't grown in MMR for like the last 5 years. Juna continuing to spit hot fire. Like, god damn, dude. Holy shit. Uh, this is when more of the shit talking started to happen. Uh, so Marty, could also be that I don't like grinding rank. Shit's stressful and makes me want to punch the monitor. In Juna, that must be it. That must be it. In that fucking sarcastic ass voice that he has. Oh, that must be it. That must be it. You know? God damn, Junior. Like, you're just fucking being a piece of shit. And thus proceeds the discussion on MMR and ranks once again. Right, this is near the end of the whole Discord discussion. And Marty says, "I can safely say this: if we all played ranked religiously, like David and Pi do, myself, we can hit 4K." And Juna says, and he's talking as my sleepy proxy at the time, "I'm not sure about that. You started talking about how good y'all are, and you ended up talking about how good y'all are. Just talking in fucking circles. Marty, you don't have to, but if you want to prove to me that you've improved, either raise your MMR to 4K, win a battle cup, or do the placement matches and get ranked over 4K in the next season," which is the season we're in right now. And while it doesn't necessarily, like, while all of these things don't necessarily prove that you're, like, good or better than I am, right? It does say that you've improved. And you might think that it's just the martial or the mechanical skill. But Juna isn't talking about that. And neither was I. And neither was Pi. We've never talked about that sort of thing as just being like, oh, because you have this number, you are getting better. Right? You were never getting better. Oh yeah, this is the time when 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 Juna said, "If I play 10% of the games that Pierre and David do, I would be the next Dendi." Of course, he's talking out of his ass, but it's more whenever we mention that we hope you guys play more ranked. It's not just because we kind of like having that number as like an EPeen thing. It's more the fact that you're putting in the time to actually get better. And you're putting yourself up to be judged by the skills that you have on you at any given moment. And of course, you can always say, well, it's always my team and all this other crap. There's only been a few people in our group, in our entire group, that have gone up 1,000 MMR points. If I remember correctly, there's only three people in our group that have gone up 1,000 MMR points from the beginning, from the start of one season to the end of it. Those three people are, in order of time accomplished, myself. I went up from 4,200 to 5,400 in one season to get to Divine for the first time when the ranks were first, like to get to 5K first and then eventually to get into Divine. That was the first one. The second one, you might know him as someone called Gosu Guy, Cool Skeleton 95. It's Juna. Juna went up 1,000 MMR points. He went up from like 2,200 to like 3,200, 3,300, around there. He went up those 1,000 MMR points from the beginning of one season to the next. He was the second person to do it, to go up 1,000 MMR points. But he never did it again. Because, I mean, I'd assume that if he kept going, he probably would have gotten to maybe like 36 or 3,700. I don't know if he would have hit 4K, but he would have gotten close. He would have gotten really close, especially with the heroes he was playing. Maybe over an extended period of time, like he would probably get to 4K, but that would have taken like a while. It would have taken him about the same amount of time that it took Pierre to get there. The third person to do it was my wonderful cousin Alan. Alan went up 1,000 MMR points from the beginning of one season to the end. He started at like 2,300 or some shit, and he went up to like 3,500. Right, and this is around the time when rank started becoming more of a deal with the group. And Juna and Alan eventually had a better MMR than like Marty and Mo and Dan and everybody. And everybody was talking shit about how like, oh, Alan's so bad. Why is his MMR like higher than ours? It's like, well, bitch, he fucking grinded like 1,000 points. He started lower than you guys by a significant portion. Pi went up a lot too, but he didn't go up 1,000. I think he got close to 1,000. He got super close to 1,000, but he did go up by a lot too. I'm making a point. If you want, we'll add Pierre in there in like the 800 club because he went up, I think, 800 before it immediately went down again. He went up 800, and then right when he was about to hit 4K, it like went straight down. And I think he eventually calibrated into like 4K, and then it went down again. But that was just him, being himself and ranked. But that's the main point that we've always been trying to get across. It's not just the fact that, oh, we're only looking for numbers or we're only looking for like tokens. We want you guys to prove to yourselves that you guys have fucking improved by actually going out of your way to seek out that challenge, right? If that was the case, if everybody's MMR was higher, because we don't play ranked religiously. That's one thing that's a misnomer. We used to play religiously, but we don't. But yet I'm still at the same high rank, and if I wasn't, I always get there, right? I started this season at what, like 4,200, and I'm at 47 right now, right? So I still went up like 500 points. You know, I got back to divine. I wasn't in divine before the end of the last season. I was like an ancient like 3 or 4, and I went up. I just went up. So why is it that whenever we always calibrate lower, but I'm the only person that ever goes and hits back to where he's normally at, right? Because I usually like hit Divine 1 or Divine 2 in every season. My record is like Divine 4, Divine 5, but that was only when the star medals went up to 7. So in actuality, it was probably like Divine like 2 or 3, which is like pretty good, but it's okay. But why is that? Why is it that when everybody starts talking about ranked and saying that it's always terrible or whatever, then why is it that me and Pierre consistently are able to keep going up, right? If Juan played ranked and he played Dota, he'd probably be able to go up, you know? And it's not even the fact that you just play it a lot. I mean, to quote Chip just a while back, he's like, we play Dota every fucking day. We play Dota every day. Even when we say we don't want to play Dota, we play Dota every day, right? So, out of all those games that we play of Dota every day, why not just play one solo before like you keep going with everyone else? Or why don't we just play ranked more often? Pierre's been pushing that for so long, ever since he started playing Dota again, like a few months back. Let's just play ranked. Every single time we play, might as well just play ranked. If you don't care about your rank because it's so low, what does it matter? The only person who has something to defend is myself. I'm the only person who has to defend my MMR every fucking season because this goddamn shit always keeps coming up. Well, I'd hit 4K if I played enough. If I played that game, I'd be good. You know, this is sort of the thing that just annoyed me about the whole Discord discussion, where uh, we keep talking about how to improve and how to get better, but when it actually comes down to doing that sort of thing, the only people who have put in that consistent kind of effort have been the three amigos and cousin Alan before he got super fucking salty. And I think it's getting better now, but even then, the only reason why that sort of thing came up in the first place was because of the Mike Ross saga, right? Me going into his chat and just talking shit and making sure that, oh, we have an opponent to play against. Like, it rekindled everybody's competitive spirit, but I had to be the one to start that, right? I had to be the one to start it and set it up, right? To like actually go out of my way to like, hey, I have a group of morons that are willing to play and fight to the death, and I trust my friends. I trust you guys. I trust you guys enough to go on stream and beat another streamer senseless in Dota. Like, cause I honestly don't think that any of us are like horrendously bad, right? As Juna so eloquently put it. Yeah, well, me and Chip were talking shit in Mike Ross's stream, but I was the one who started it first. All right, that's the whole point. Chip came in like that moment to literally clinch the deal, right? He's like, I'm gonna get on and start talking shit. Well, but that's my point is, or Junis' point rather, that I am just co-opting, right? A lot of the things that Dota entails, it's not just about being mechanically good, right? Like, cause mechanically speaking, I'm better than most people. Like, Pierre's probably the best player mechanically out of everyone if you're only counting like one position. Like, if anybody would be put on a pro team, it'd be me and him. And he would be at a slightly higher position only because he knows how to play offlane really well. Like, that's the only thing he knows how to do. But that sort of thing helps you out more when you have to build a team. And a lot of the times it's just a mentality that brings a lot of people down, right? I mean, I feel like a significant portion of the Gosu Garage like group or clan or whatever you want to call it, good players mechanically, and everyone has like really good strengths that they all play to, right? But a lot of times it's just a mentality or just how they approach the game that usually fucks everyone up, right? And myself included, right? It's not like I don't have, my own issues. Part of the issues that I have is that I feel like I have to consistently prove myself to you idiots as far as like, hey, I think I know what I'm talking about. I have to consistently go into ranked and I have to consistently get into that sort of MMR just to say that, and everybody takes it the wrong way. Because if it wasn't that way, people wouldn't pay attention to me. And when it does get that way, people just think I'm being a show off, right? I can't win with you motherfuckers. You can't, to quote Chip, you can't just throw me a fucking bone and just say, okay, at least defer like some information to the things that I'm saying, right? Whether or not it's my delivery or communication or anything like that. But again, that's just a mentality thing. That's just something that is outside of the game that affects the game, right? Which is the main reason why I decided to analyze the whole Discord uh, conversation that we had, right? In this way, right? I did it not just to show and talk about what people are good and bad at certain lanes and how they can try to improve it. More specifically, it's about the mentality you have when you're actually thinking about the game. Because if I just tell you, oh, last hit better, last hit better, okay. Okay, that's a great help, you know? Amazing. Thank you so much, oh wise teacher, you know? Juna, it's like you need to learn how to push good like what I do. Like, oh, thank you so much, Juna. Like right there, like you should have pressed Q there. Okay, great. What about everything else that led up to that situation, Like analyze the things, analyze it for yourself. That's like my main message to Gosu Garage and anybody else that might be watching this just randomly, you know, this quote unquote anime girl talking about Dota. It applies to everything. It's not just about Dota. It's about life, man. Dota's about life. You have to be able to look inside yourself and see like these are the sort of issues that I have, and you have to take steps to remedy them. Of course, it's not going to be easy, right? You have to basically go out of your way to admit that, like, yeah, dude, I suck. You have to look yourself in the mirror. You got to take your shirt off, right? Look at the flub you have as a stomach, and be like, this is me right here. We got to fix this. That's the first step. The first step in curing your problems is admitting you have a problem, right? And everybody has, problems, right? It's just when it starts getting to the point where it starts seeping into the game and that mindset starts making you play worse in the game is when those sort of things start matching up, right? Eventually we'll get to like more detailed things as far as, oh, when you're playing mid in this particular like situation or this matchup, like you could do this. But that's something that requires like me going to everybody on an individual level, right? I have to go into Dota. I have to go look at the games and be like, okay, step by step, tell me like what your mindset was, like what you wanted to do here, all that stuff, right? Because it all matters, right? You want to put yourself in a position where even if because there are moments where a bad decision can be a good decision if it's executed really well, right? A half-assed plan executed well is better than a well-executed plan done poorly, right? And as long as you have a good mindset and philosophy as to like how to think about the game and how to fight, especially, it helps out a lot, right? I mean, that's the main reason why I mentioned that. Like everybody always thinks that I'm just a meth head, just going after anything that has a red life bar, and I just go push, 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 and just fight all the time, which isn't true. If you analyze my games more closely, it's more about just setting up those situations to be aggressive. Because yeah, I'm good at being aggressive. I'm good at brawling in Dota. I'm good at that sort of thing. But if there's a moment where that sort of thing doesn't present itself, I do everything in my power to set that up, right? It's the reason why my Undying is my best hero. Undying has the ability to force that type of game onto other people, right? The moment he's in the game, everybody has to fight. And you force the fight, because if not, you just lose the game in 20 minutes. I'm forcing you to fight me, right? So instead of thinking about it as like, oh, David picked Undying, he just wants to fight all the time. It's like, how about I want to pick something that allows us to fight and be really strong in this particular situation. Huh? Oh, he wants to play Dota. I see. Well, I think that's enough for now. I've been talking for about 2 hours. Mouth's really dry. I should have had like a bottle of water or something. I didn't
You
think
should have been
about it.
drinking when you were doing this, like
Yeah.
liquor or whatnot. You usually
Nah.
do.
No, I can't. No. I mean, I could have, but I drank a lot this last weekend because of the whole holiday season. I kind of wanted a break. I don't want to drink until like next like Friday or like this Friday or Saturday or something. And even then, I might not just because it's like ugh.
Mhm.
So it was a lot, you know. And I would only drink if we did something like as a group. If it was just like me hanging out, I probably wouldn't do anything. Mm.
Nah, I can't because apparently last time I drank heavy with these guys, I had a mental breakdown and I cried in Chris's arm.
Mm.
I should probably lay off the liquor for a bit.
Well. Jeez. Um. Yeah. I mean, it's not really anything. Usually, I mean, for me, it's just not even like mental health. It's like my body. I just want to take a break. Usually a week
Mm.
is enough, but no, I just needed to make sure that I have my thoughts uh, detailed in a video in some way, shape, or form,
Mm.
and I felt like this was the best way to do it. I don't. I hope it wasn't too rambly, but I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it there. Maybe next time I do one of these things, I'll actually analyze somebody's like game in depth or a few games, just to see what I'm talking about when things calm down and you actually talk to me like a human being and not think that I'm just like a giant e-peen saying that I'm divine all the time. Um, but anyways, um, I think I'll take a little bit of a break. I'll probably watch these guys like Dota game, but I'm gonna just relax because it was a lot of my brain to have to like think about all this shit. Waking up, it's like what the fuck is happening in Discord? Having to put all this shit down. Um, but that's it. If anybody here that isn't part of Gosu Garage, or anything like that would be down to watch more games and content in the future, feel free to follow. You know, all that stuff. We'll have more analyses like this in the future. Maybe with less anime girls. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Maybe I should un unretire my face rig. Um, but yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Thanks for listening. Whoever is editing this, probably gonna be me later. Um, just put a reminder that I have to like drink water. Just put a little like I should have drank water counter in the corner every like 15 minutes or so, just for future reference. No room in. There's no. We don't have a budget. We don't have a budget. Oh God.